Adam Prince, what's up, brother? How are you, man?
Hey, what's going on, Larry?
Not too much, man. Digging the hat. I like the hat.
Yeah, yeah, you got to represent,
Change the game. Yeah.
change the
So,
game.
it's interesting. As you and I were talking about, some of the points that you really want to hit home on this podcast. And I look at that hat and I think about someone who is in your shoes or who have shared, some serious childhood trauma like you and I have, to make that very conscious effort to be like, on my watch, despite challenges, this is not going to be the same. This is going to be a different thing. I'm going to change it, right? And by doing so, we do change the game and we do change the patterns and all that. But um, first of all, I want to thank you for coming on the show because I know we're going to talk about some pretty juicy stuff today. But so thanks for doing that. Appreciate you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, here because of our good mutual friend who's formidable in the alliance, and it's Reggie. So I definitely have to give him a shout out for setting this up with us.
Yeah, and so those of you guys outside the alliance, Reggie is he is one of our 50 team captains. He literally, I think he is what we call our one of our OGs. So he's been with us. He was a member back in 2016. I think he joined the leadership team. It was probably right around 2017. So he's been on leadership for 6 years and just runs an unbelievably close knit, connected call team. But as far as like, I want to unpack a few things from your childhood because you and I were jamming about our childhoods, and I think everybody comes from something, right? Some types of good, some types of adversity. But for you, I would just download with us what it was like for you growing up.
Looking back now, it's the one word I can describe it as is instability. Um, it was moving between several different schools, houses, apartments, lived out of a motel for a little bit. Uh, it was just never consistent, never knew what was going to happen next. And at the time when I was younger, it felt normal. It felt like this is what life is about. And it wasn't until I became an adult and had my own kids that I was like, wow, that wasn't great. It wasn't great at all.
And so, share with us some detail around that. Like, what happened for you growing up?
Yeah. So, my dad, my dad was 18 years uh, senior to my mom. He'd already been married, had kids of his own, and he left when I was 9. Um, he wasn't around my whole childhood, but he left for good when I was 9 years old. So my brothers were 8 and 6 at the time, and from that point on, we never saw him again, never heard from him again. Um, it wasn't had no clue who he was, or I mean, we knew who he was, but we didn't know where he was and his life. And it wasn't until August of 2020 that I got a call from his first wife saying that he had passed away in Mississippi.
Whoa.
Yeah,
So you have not. So you were 6 years old or nine at the time. I
I
know
was 9 years old.
you were
Yeah,
nine,
yeah.
and your dad leaves at 9 years old. I mean, did that even hit your radar that this could be the last time I see him?
No, not at all. No, because at that point we had been. Um, I remember seeing him maybe like, I don't know, one or two weekends a year at that point. From what I remember, it may have been more than that, but being that young, I don't remember exactly. Um, but yeah, we had no clue that would have been the last time we ever heard from him again.
Wow.
Um,
So what
yeah,
was
and it wasn't until recently that I started doing a little bit more research. I tried doing 23andMe and the ancestry stuff, None of his family show up in any of my search history. But what I did find out was that he was a Vietnam War veteran, and so I've requested his information from the Veterans Association to maybe see if there was some kind of trauma that happened, PTSD, um, anything to explain, his psychological being and what made him just take off and leave like that.
Do you have any information, or do you just go off of assumptions?
Those are my assumptions. I'm trying to go into it with an open mind and being like,
Yeah.
what was the mindset of this guy to just leave? I look at my kids and I'm like, there's no way
Yeah.
I couldn't just leave and never talk to them again.
I have a viewpoint on that. You want to kind of go back and forth on this a little bit?
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
So it's interesting, right? Because our childhood's kind of aligned, and I don't want to say that this is like for the audience sake, this is not like a doom and gloom pity party, right? And
Right.
here's what I'll tell you. This is actually a story of overcoming odds, and it's a story of, yeah, this happened to me, but despite all that, this is the direction I went in, and my kids, my boys are actually old enough to where I don't offer a whole lot of detail about my childhood, but when they ask, I do share it with them. And I still share it at a pretty high level. I don't go too much into the weeds, but when they want to go into the weeds, I'll share it with them. And this is one thing that, and I'll share all the good and all the not so great. But no matter what story it was, right? No matter what happened, because you and I were talking about this earlier, we had a live in boyfriend there for a while. My mom was married 3 times. My biological father, I didn't know him. He left when I was little. I ran into him again when I was 12. We parted ways again. I had a stepdad from the ages of 6 to 10. He left when I was 10. I've never seen him again. I've actually found out he died about 10 years back. And I got reunited with my biological father when I was 30. So there's a lot, right? And then we
Hmm.
had this live in boyfriend with us for a while too, from the time I was 15 to 17. He was the worst. Like, there was all kinds of abuse and alcohol. Like, he was the most intense personality. And on top of it, when he moved out, like, he took all the furniture in our house except for the beds. Like, I remember that. So
Yeah.
like when my kids ask me about this stuff, right? I tell them, and I tell them just in a very matter of fact sort of way, like how you and I are talking about it right now. I don't get into the weeds of like the emotion, like, oh my God, I feel so bad for you. I was like, I
Hmm.
don't spend 1 minute feeling. I was like, listen, that dude leaving, like, one of the coolest lessons that came back from this was if we can bounce back from this, me and my mom, like, we could probably take on just about anything. And we did, so it was like this tremendous experience and resilience, and it's like, and I also tell my kids too. I'm like, they're like, well, your stepdad left and your biological father left and all. I'm like, yeah. And guess what? I'm so insanely motivated to never leave your side, no matter what, because of how that felt. So it has sparked all these really good things of the person I am now because of that. So I don't
Yeah.
feel bad about that. It's made people into who they are, and that's that.
Yeah.
I don't know if is that your view as well.
Yeah. I actually even have like a gratitude
Yeah.
uh, to him leaving because what if I just turned out to be exactly like him? Um, had he stayed, gone, stayed, gone, stayed, to never have that that security of, is he going to be around? Is he not? Am I going to pick up his bad traits? Um, because with at least with him being gone, I didn't have to. I didn't have to unlearn anything that he unconsciously put in me. Um, and my brothers, they still to this day they hold a, a grudge against him. Um, they don't have any nice feelings or any good feelings around him. I've taken that time to just try to understand where he was at. And maybe he was a POS. I don't, maybe he was just like, bye, see ya. I'm gonna go start a new life. But it's not fair for me to assume that because I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, I think this is like the story, and I'm on the other side of this because I've had discussions like this with my dad. And while I don't agree with it, I honestly think I I I always I'll be honest. I always try to think that this person had the maybe the best of intentions when they made this decision. Like that's the filter I choose to run it through. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. Like for all we know, like maybe there was a dirtbag trait in there, and
Yeah.
they just don't care. Which I think that there's some level of society. But I think if you really ask most fathers, like, hey, do you want to be a part of your kid's life? You know, do you want to be connected to them? The answer is an over residing yes with everything that I have, right? But I think we reach these crossroads that perhaps your dad did, maybe my dad did, to where I remember, you know, and this is how heartfelt my dad is about this story. He's like, you know, I'll never forget, you know, your mom asking me to sign over parental rights to your stepdad because he wanted to adopt you. They wanted him to adopt you when you were 4 and I had not been a part of your life. And because it was very complicated and it was really hard and it was hard on you and it was hard on me and it was hard on your mom. And he's like, I was just a kid then. You know, I was like 25 years old.
Right.
He's like, or I'm sorry, he was like, he wasn't even 30 yet, I don't think. He's like, I honestly, it was the hardest thing I ever did. He's like, but I thought it was the most selfless thing I could do for you because I thought I was giving you a better life because you didn't want to hang out with me. You know, you didn't even really know me. And when I took you like for my visitation rights and stuff like that, you did not want to be with me. You want to
Mm-hmm.
be with your mom. He's like, so I kept questioning, like, am I doing more harm than good here? He's like, and now, you know, decades past that decision, and that was I wouldn't have made that decision twice. You know, so I think some people just make, you know, your dad was young, so was mine, and perhaps
He was a little bit older. He was,
a little
I
bit
think,
older. Yeah.
yeah, he was almost 40 when he
Oh,
had me. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
got it. Okay.
Yeah. My mom was 20. He was almost 40.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Sorry.
Yeah.
But so do you think that there might have been a story there, or a trait of like, well, I'm just not worthy? Like it was way more about him than it was about you.
I don't, it's hard to say. It really
Yeah.
is. It's tough to say because I know, my mother's actions also played a role in that relationship too because um, she didn't try to make there to be a connection. I remember when I was 16 years old and I was trying to buy my first car, and I was talking to my mom about this car that I think was like $400, and I was like, I
Those were the
don't,
good old days.
yeah, yeah, I know, right? It's still drivable and
Yeah.
everything, and she was like, I don't have the money. Why don't you try to find your deadbeat dad?
Oh boy.
And I remembered I called, what was that service, 411 or something
You're talking
back
about
in the day.
information.
Yeah, so like
Yeah.
I called this number, and I got this Bob Prince all the way down in Mississippi, and I called this guy, and he goes, I don't have any kids, and I was like, oh, okay,
Okay. Thanks.
and I hung up. I was like, and that was it. That was my last attempt at ever, you know, at ever trying to contact my father.
Interesting. So, okay, well, let's go ahead and back up again then.
Yeah,
You moved. It was about 20 times in like your first 18 years, correct?
yeah. We were constantly on the move. Yeah,
What? So looking back on that, what was that like for you?
it seemed normal. It
Right.
seemed,
Yeah.
yeah, it just seemed normal to be at a place for a year or less and just have to move to the next place. And I don't know the entire story behind it, but some of the information I've gathered is my mom couldn't pay the rent. So she would get evicted and we'd go to the next place. And she struggled to pay the rent on that place. And and we'd get evicted from that one. Um, and my mom was, she was one of those people that was, I am not gonna get help from anyone ever, whether that's the government or family. Um, I know there was a few times that she got help from my grandmother, um, but my grandmother died in 2001, and I think I was 13 years old. And I remember that was a turning point for my mom, where it seemed like her life just kind of railroaded into depression, and it seemed like she just couldn't get a grip on taking care of herself or us.
Yeah, and I can only imagine because you grew up with four brothers, and you
Yeah.
guys were all going through these moves.
No, so my two older brothers, they lived with their mom. He was
Okay,
their mom was my dad's first wife,
got it.
and so they lived with her full time. We actually would spend a lot of time there, and their mom was definitely uh, in my life. She was one of those people that definitely helped form who I am, because she tried to help out as much as she could, even though my mom was the mistress. She was the young girl that my dad was cheating on and having an affair with, and I ended up having kids. Three of us.
Oh,
Um, yeah.
wow, man. What is your relationship like with your other two brothers then?
Unfortunately, I don't have one right now. Somewhere down the line, we just fell out of contact, and when I joined the army, it definitely in 2007, that made it put a strain on trying to have any kind of relationship with any family members. But that was definitely the turning point where we just lost kind of like any kind of relationship. Like I invited them to my second marriage in 2017, and I remember not getting any response whatsoever from them. And
Mm. Do you think it has anything to do with? I have found that when you share in something like really traumatic together, right? It's not necessarily the other person, but it's the shared experience that's like, man, I don't even know if I can see that person because it brings back a lot of things that we went through as a kid.
yeah, and I can definitely say that for my two full brothers.
Yeah.
We all experienced the trauma in different ways. Yeah, when I was younger, I never got into drugs. I never got into heavy drinking. Um, but what I found my crux, my you know habits to be, were just constantly being busy. I dove into work. That was kind of like my drug of choice, was like
Yeah.
to constantly keep my mind busy and stay active. And I still suffer from that to this day. That I have a hard time just stopping and being like, I don't need to do anything right now. Like I can sit in my feelings. And unfortunately for my brothers, one of them chose drugs, and while he's sober right now, it's still that past behavior definitely
Yeah.
affects our relationship today.
Yeah. 100%. I think a lot of people, I've made my own amends with this, but there's a part of me that I think, I think someone's success comes from, a serious motivation from somewhere, right? Either you are, you're running from something or you're running to something. And I think, in my own experience, it's a little bit, it's quite a bit of both. In my past, it was definitely more heavily weighted towards running away, because I found that, if you grow up with a lot of different challenges, maybe even some trauma, you're going to quote unquote medicate somehow, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's through drinking, whether that's through drugs, or even success, being a workaholic. And I think it all boils down to one common thing, and I'll say this to you, and I want to get your viewpoint on it, which is I have a hard time being a human being from time to times. That's why I'm so much of a human doing. I can't remember what, I think it was Gary John Bishop who actually said that quote. And I was like, it hit me so hard. He's like, most people who are the most successful, it's because they have some issues with just being, right? They feel that they always have to be doing something productive, something to move the needle, something that is going to drive things forward. Otherwise, it's hard for them just to sit with something. And
Yeah.
I think that that's probably a powerful trait that people just in general have, through childhood, if they've grown up with that, we have some issues with that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
You know,
And
go
it
ahead.
didn't,
Yeah.
I wish it would have, gave me the willpower to have better grades growing up in school,
Right.
but I definitely, um, since I had no supervision, I just did not try. I didn't even care. Um, but yeah, it wasn't until I joined the army and it was like, yeah, I just had this drive to just like constantly reach for whatever the best was. That's where I wanted to be. Um,
What was it about that environment that you take somebody with your background, with my background, and all of a sudden, like, that's just, it's like a launching pad into good things. What was it about that?
I think it's the structure. It's it's having those rules. They're hard set rules. Whereas like before in life, I didn't have rules. I didn't do my homework because nobody was enforcing it. Nobody made me do it.
Yeah.
Um, I failed fourth or fifth, sixth, and seventh grade, and it wasn't until seventh grade that my mom was like, "You're not going to summer school this year. You're going to repeat school." And it wasn't. Yeah, she was trying to teach me a lesson, but it was also because she couldn't afford the summer school. So
Wow.
it was at that point that I was like, okay, I at least have to do the bare minimum to get, to get through, and so I don't have to do this all over again. Um,
So
but
you actually you failed, but summer school kind of saved your hide, and it wasn't until,
yeah,
and you said, what grade did you have to repeat?
seventh grade.
Wow, dude, this is crazy, man.
Yeah, it was.
I had to repeat eighth grade.
It sucked, didn't it?
It. So I don't know your story of what happened after that, but for me, it was horrible. Like when it first happened, because like the school that I was a part of, we only had, I think, maybe 48 kids in my graduating class, so it was pretty small.
Yeah, it was
And
about
then
65.
I remember like they were rehearsing for eighth grade graduation, and I had to sit on the side. They wouldn't even allow me to walk with the class, and I had to make up a story that we were going on a family vacation. I wasn't going to be able to attend graduation anyway because I didn't want to have to deal with the fallout of facing all my fellow students, and I wasn't moving on. It just sucked.
Yeah,
Like, you ever really want to be left out? Like, that was big. Then when I repeated the eighth grade, I went to a different school, and it was hard, but it was also like this beautiful launching pad to start really turning things around. And so it taught me a great, this is where I go back to the gratitude of it. It taught me this incredible lesson. And I had this really fantastic teacher that I came across with, still talk to her to this day. And she was just like one of those people, just very inspiring. And, just really was such a good experience going through that, which I did great in high school and then went on to college. I don't know if I would have even have gone through that path had I not had that do over. So, but what was it like for you?
yeah. Part of it. So going back to my dad, I think that was for me. I think that's where I went through this life of being afraid of being abandoned. So I would push people out of my
100%.
life, and I attribute him leaving as like that's where my negative um, trait came from for that. Because like I mean, all the way, gosh, it's all the way up until just recently in the past couple of years, like I had this fear of abandonment, and I would push people out of my life so that they couldn't hurt me by leaving. And so to go back to the failing seventh grade, for me, it was also like it helped to get away from the class that I was in and start like kind of like a whole new. I could start over again, right? I could be someone new with a whole different set
Yeah.
of kids, basically.
And I want you to go back to what you just said because I did the same thing in relationships. And to be honest, I couldn't even figure out why. My kids even know this to this day, but my wife and I were together for 7 years before we got married. And I broke up with her 7 times and it became like this joke, like that every year it was our annual breakup. And my wife will even tell you today, I mean, now that I psychologically understand it, what I was doing, which I was doing the exact same thing. So I didn't have this good outlook whatsoever on marriage and long term relationships. My norm, you used the word normal, like, hey, we moved 18 times or 20 times in 18 years. That was normal. It was insanely normal for me growing up that all relationships come to an end. Like that was
Yeah.
like, why would anything else be different? Right. So all relationships come to an end. Marriage is a good stepping stone for a while. And then you get divorced and you move on to somebody else. Like that's literally how I grew up. And that's what I thought what the norm was. And my wife she comes from this opposite family experience. There is not one person, and her family's huge. She's one of 28 first cousins, for crying out loud. Her mom is one of 6 kids, and all 6 kids have at least 3 to 4 or 5 kids. And for generations, at least going 4 or 5 generations back, not one person in her family has ever been divorced. Not one. So that's her lineage. Like you
And
just don't get divorced.
yeah, it's incredible
It
to
is.
think about.
So she grew up with like these functional relationship skills, like conflict resolution. It's like, hey, you got a problem, you talk it out, right?
Yeah.
Mine was, oh, we just got in a fight. We're not meant to be. I'm out. And I would break up with her. And she would be like, oh my God, like what is wrong with you? Like we're just arguing about this one thing and you just want to like throw the whole relationship away. And to me, like in my idiotic mind back then, that made total sense. Like, well, yeah, that's if this is not going to work, it's not going to work. So I might as well just move on. So I had to learn all these things over the years of conflict resolution and communication and all these things that are skills in relationships. But I think when you come from a childhood like that, that you're just like, well, this person's going to leave anyway. And if anybody's going to control that one, it's going to be me,
Gonna be
not
me.
her.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
But how did it show up for you?
It showed up when I finally found stability with my second wife. Um, we bought our home and we lived in the same home. Her family was very close. All of her friends were very close. Like she has her friends from high school. And to me, that was just so foreign. I was like, how do you still have friends from high school? Like,
Right.
you have friends on your Facebook from high school. I'm like, I wouldn't even know their names to like look them
Right.
up.
Yeah.
Um, and you just start, and I make it sound easy, but it's definitely not. It doesn't just like, but I start to look at it and I'm like, the military moving so many times in my childhood allowed me to like become someone new every time we moved or, new group of kids or new school or whatever. And then in the army, it's so easy to kind of keep that going because people are just constantly in and out. You have a set of neighbors that are there for a year, they move out, another set of neighbors move in, and it's just like consistent like that. But when I got out of the army and was dating my second wife, like it was like, wow, okay, people are starting to know the real me because I've been around long enough for them to see it. Um, so that was definitely a kick in the ass for me, joining the alliance because I did lose some relationships, mutual friends that I gained in the marriage, um, that they no longer wanted to be associated with me or have me as a friend. um, because of all these like these victim mindset and negative traits that I had.
Well, I mean, I think, when you have that type of mindset, you grew up like that. And, even if you look at the movie Good Will Hunting, because a lot of people are very familiar with that. And that's exactly the way, Matt Damon portrayed that character, right? He left relationships before they got too close. And the only real relationships he had were with the three other guys, that he basically did life with, like his tribe. And they were all like partiers and drinkers and all that other stuff, right? Trying to
Yeah,
escape all that. And he had one good friend, and that was Ben Affleck, who held him to the fire, held him to a higher level, challenged him to think differently, right? You'll never forget that part in the movie where he's like, "Listen, if you're still around when we're 50, I'm gonna kick you. I'm gonna kill you. Like that's not a promise. That's an absolute promise, man. I'm gonna kill you." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, and so he held them to a high standard of like, you can do better. Was was the army that way for you in a way that like, hey, you can do better and we will get the best out of you? Is that part of why you think maybe the structure of the army, maybe the brotherhood that was there, things you learned was so beneficial?
I think that was a starting point. But really, like the story you're talking about with Goodwill Hunting, I really owe a lot of that to my second wife. She was very like no BS type of like you either do it or you don't. Like that's not the quality of a good person. Don't do that. Um, and unfortunately, I didn't really see it until after we divorced and was able to sit back and be like, the reason I pushed back so much was because she was right. Like she was right. I needed to be better, to treat people better, and really treat myself better. Because I definitely I didn't treat myself positively until I started doing the work myself.
What did you start doing? Like, what were some of the things that you started doing from a positive impact standpoint? And then from a positive impact standpoint, what did it do for you?
I think it's holding yourself to a higher standard, and not being afraid to push back on people that challenge that. I think that's the biggest one. Is I'm I'm able to put myself in situations that might not be ideal, and I'm like, no, that's not right. I'm not. I don't want to be a part of this. And I'll give a good example of that is I had been kind of seeing this girl, um, who just randomly told me, just kind of like a sidebar conversation. She said, my boyfriend. And I looked at her and I was like, I'm sorry, what? What did you say? And she said, my boyfriend. And I was like, I'm not okay with that. I didn't know you had a boyfriend. I didn't know that was, I didn't even know you were, I was like, I knew you were kind of like dating, but I didn't know you were in a relationship. And she's like, yeah, I know. I know I'm not happy with it. And I'm like, well, I'm not happy. That's not the life I want to live. I'm not going to be that other guy.
Right.
Um, and that's not something I don't think I would have done 10 years ago, 10, 15
S-
years ago. I don't think I would have, I think I would have been like, oh, okay.
So, as far it sounds like for you, you learned how to stand your ground.
Yeah, standing ground. Um, and it's comes from one of the exercises that we do in the alliance, which is the core values.
Yeah.
You know, when I thought that when I was in the army, there was always core values, right? There was the values of the army, and I always thought they were just so corny. And actually, when I first saw the core values in the alliance, I was like, oh, it's so like cliche and corny. Um, But it wasn't until I told my story with my own call team that I was like, no, the core values actually, like, they're so crucial for just how you live your life. Because it's like, once you know, once you know what you want your life to be, it's easy to decide what doesn't fit into it.
You're 100%, 100%. You know, it's interesting you say that, because that was when we first started doing the core values exercise. That was in 2016. Like, we had like our literally our first round of members do that exercise. And at first, I don't even think that actually came from another coach that I was working with at the time too, that exercise. And I was like, what is this all about? I really just don't understand. So why not just do the work, you know?
Yeah,
And this other coach that was working with me, he's like, you got to understand why you're doing the work though. And then this becomes like literally your compass moving forward for all decisions. And I'm like, how does that work out? And, you know, I'll share with you, like, so, you know, connection, adventure, experiences over stuff, memories over things, you know, and that's how we live our lives. So you'll never find the Hagners driving a brand new vehicle ever. You won't really see us wearing designer clothes. You know, like we shop at TJ Maxx and Marshalls. You know, um, our our environment is actually one of our core values. So we will spend resources on making sure that our home is what we want, right? Our environment. And but my kids are my this is literally just fresh off of the conversation in the Hagner household last night. My 15-year-old and I were talking last night, and we had just got back from a weekend where my youngest brother-in-law had just got married, and we were out of town. And he's just like, my gosh, he's like, this summer was crazy for being out of town. He's like, we went on 3 vacations, and we went on one big one because my wife and I were celebrating 20 years this year. But I was like, yeah, we travel. That's part of our core values as a family. Like,
yeah,
I was like, it's adventure, it's memories, it's these things that we get to do together, to like literally look back on your childhood, look back on the family, and say, we lived life, and we adventured out, and we explored together, and we experienced it together, right? And he's like, where did that come from? And I was like, it came from, and he didn't remember. I was like, it came from us 5 years ago, sitting down when you were just 10 at the time, and we all talked about the things that bring us together as a family and how we were going to make decisions. And I was like, do you remember that? And he's like, I do. And I was like, and a lot of it has to do with like these things that we get to do as a family when we're not at home and we do adventure out. I was like, so it's very easy for us to make those decisions of what are we going to buy that new car that we need, or are we going to go on this, you know, adventure together? And I was like, and when you filter those things through your core values and what you value, we all know we don't value a car. Every car that we drive is literally a buffet of goldfish and crumbs and dirt and cleats and smelly uniforms and just absolute sand and garbage, and like they're just, our cars get trashed.
yeah.
So why
Unless
in God's
unless one of
name
your
do we
core
value that?
values is staying clean,
Right. Yeah.
which
I mean,
is
it does go to environment,
yeah, which is one of
but
my yeah.
I would love for you to just share, you know, your core values and how that has really shown up for you as a father, as a man, and maybe even helping you overcome some of these things. Because I know for me, man, every time we do something like this, like we stake a flag and we're like, man, that was an incredible experience. And it could be something as simple as like we did a float trip and a camping trip,
Yeah.
but we did it and had memories together. I'm like, this is how, like, we literally get to rewrite the story of how we grew up.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I was trying to pull them up so I could get them perfectly right. So when I did this, I used these core value cards. Somebody in the alliance actually showed me these, and I used these.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I actually sit there with my 3-year-old son, and he'll go through them and he'll pick them out, and I'm like, what does this mean to you? And it's funny to hear his responses. There's one that's called like friendship. As one of the values is friendship, and he's like, oh, my best friend. So they're really good to. I'll put these out there for all the other guys because they're really good to do with the kids as well. Um, but yeah, so like one of my big ones is values is compersion, and compersion for me mixes kindness, empathy, and humility. And the reason why I chose that one is because I think I had a very selfish mindset for majority of my life. Like my life was more important than everyone else's, and that was a defense mechanism that I used. It was no one's going to take care of me, so I'm going to take care of myself. So when I added that as one of my core values, and for example, going back to my father, I'm able to step back and be like, maybe there's more. Maybe there's more to the story. Just having that empathy and humility to kind of put myself in his shoes and be like, all right, why would I do this? And so I try to do that with all the relationships in my life. And then my other two are humor and open minded.
I find that humor is something that if you're dealing with, I think, trauma, I think humor is like a superpower.
Yeah.
Is like finding the humor in something, right? Because otherwise it could whatever you're experiencing could I'm not trying to take away from like what trauma can do to somebody, but it's also how we interpret the world. But I'm curious as to, with your kids and just how you go about life in general. Can you give us some examples of how these have really helped align maybe an action to what you're doing?
Like humor. I used to use humor as a defense mechanism. It was a way
Right.
to like,
Same.
yeah, it was a way to kind of like, oh yeah, my life is a joke, but it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and now, I find that people just enjoy my company because I'm able to make it lighthearted. And like one day at work, I saw this lady, and she's like, I haven't seen you in probably 10 years, but I recognize that grin of yours. She's like, I knew that grin as soon as I saw you. And last time I saw you, you had hair and were in uniform. So, um, and then it's also like having fun with the kids. I'm that fun, silly dad that's turning up the music in the car and not caring who's around. And my two older daughters, they unfortunately live in New York most of the time. I live in Maryland, just south of Baltimore. And so they were here for the summer. And my youngest daughter says her best friend who came to stay with us last summer, she's like, Dad, my friend says she misses you because you're so fun. And she hopes that she gets to come down again. And she also misses her boyfriend that's hanging in the bathroom. So in my bathroom, I have a picture of Lloyd from Dumb and Dumber hanging up, where he's on the toilet and is like he's like gripping on the toilet, and so I have that in my bathroom.
That's awesome.
So it's like that's just I think that's a perfect example of the humor I try to add to life. Is like, you know, I, I can have a really nice home and really nice clean environment, and pictures of the kids and stuff on the wall, but I can also have that on the wall, and my kids' friends will talk about it and tell, say how they miss my picture hanging on the bathroom wall.
I think that's there's a couple things there I think is so important. Number one is having that sense of humor, right? I mean, kids at the end of the day, they want to laugh. There's obviously a time to guide them, lead them, all that good stuff. But there's also a time to laugh with them, right? And to find, the good things. I think it's really powerful to have your kids' friends brag about you to your kids, right? And we try to create this environment with our kids and their friends around at our house. Like, hey, our house is the house that we gather at, and I think it, right in line with our core values, right? The reason we have, like, our home set up the way we do, like outside there's a big patio with a fire pit, and a pond back there that we fish at and stuff like that. Like, we want kids to come here and fish and gather and make s'mores and hang out by the fire and talk to us and laugh with us and that kind of thing. And we play music and stuff like that while we're outside. We throw the football together, like things like that, to where when I hear my son's girlfriend, say one of the things that she appreciates being over at our house is it's like her home away from home, and she feels and she loves our family.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, things like that my son then hears her say, I really value that. And I really love that, because I think it does bring the kids back under your own roof. And most importantly, they want to be here, right? Not
Yeah,
that they have to. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. That's one of the things I appreciated about my ex-wife and her family. Her mom is that same way. Like, she put in the pool and has pool parties almost every weekend during the summer. And um, it was one of those things that I missed so much after the divorce. Yeah, I don't think we've said yet, but it's been a year almost to the day, um, as of recording this, that I got divorced from my second wife, and it's been tough. It's been tough to lose that, um, those connections and that dynamic of family. So it's one of the reasons at my house I built a deck and I put in our pool and a trampoline and a kids play set, because I want that same thing. Like, I still, I want my house to be the place where the kids just scream and run and play. And like, I have my son's friends over as often as we can, so that, you know, it, this place becomes a place of stability for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree with that. I will also want to ask you too, you have a mindset that when challenged, and I'm sure it hasn't always been pretty as it hasn't been for a lot of people, but you have this mindset where I see these things that have happened in your life, and you could have easily have went down another path of like just complete and total victimhood, which I'm sure we all, if you're experiencing anything like that, you're going to spend some time there. It's just a matter of when you're going to check out and move on,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or are you going to stay in that camp?
Right.
But for you, we might have men listening to this podcast episode right now that's going through a season of like, dude, like, I can't even see the forest through the trees right now. Not to even think that there might be something good on the other side of it. But you have this just relentless pursuit about you that you just you get your way through it, and you do it in a way that, like, you use things like humor, you use things like the right mental focus, the right resilience. But I'd love for you to just share with a man any advice you have around how you just dissect that and what a man could do, like what the right next thing is for him to do.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because it's not something that came easy for me.
Sure.
When my second wife and I divorced, when she said she wanted to separate, I had the mindset. I was like, good, finally, I don't have to. I don't have to deal with this anymore. I can do what I want. I don't have to be this person that you like. In my mind, she was looking for this person that was like made up. Um, Obviously looking back now, I'm like, nah, it really wasn't. It was pretty simple what she wanted. But I was just so close minded to being out of my own head. So I went through that period where I was like, good, uh, let's just cut it. We'll just cut our losses and move on. And then, of course, it came in and it hit me hard. Like, no, she was moving on. She was moving on without me. Um, I became I became such an asshole, um, and just a nasty person. It's one of the reasons that we don't have a relationship right now, outside of just what we need to do for our son. And if I could help anyone, it would be to. I hope I'm getting them and while they're in that period of like separation, maybe coming up, maybe not, just to like shut up for a minute. Just shut up, stop like the victim mindset, stop like blaming your spouse for what you are doing and how you are acting, and just take time to be like, all right, what does this really mean?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I really do. I wish I could go back and just like remember that she also, she was going through her own trauma in her own way. Like, it wasn't easy for her to do either, even though from my side it looked like it was. It looked like she was like, okay, bye. Um, but now, unfortunately, now that's too late. I see that no, it wasn't like that.
What do you take into the next relationship now? Like, what skills have you taken into maybe your next romantic relationship? Just maybe things you would do differently.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because so my oldest daughter is 15. She'll be turning 16 in next month, and I told her, I was like, you can't, because she was telling me, you can date dad or something like that, and I was like, uh, you're not allowed to have a relationship until I have one.
Oh my
And I was
gosh.
like, I'm gonna put that off for as long as possible.
Right.
I was like, if that's the deal, I'm not doing. I'm not going to be
Right.
in one. Um, and I think going into it, because I've had a lot of first dates. I've had a lot of I've met a lot of people in this past couple of years, and I think it's introspection. It's having those boundaries, um, to know what's right and what's wrong, and to be okay with things not being okay, right? Like, I might talk to somebody for uh, weeks and then finally meet up with them, and I'm like, no, they're not. They're not that person. And being okay to say, hey, it was a wonderful time, but this is not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So having that honesty is definitely huge. Um, and it's not something I did in my first or in either one of my marriages. I was never honest with myself because I was afraid that with honesty they would leave me.
Yep. Yeah. I think I think for anybody, I mean, that's a real fear for anybody, but I think more so than someone who's got trauma. But I love that North Star of like just honesty.
So,
Right.
yeah, just honesty. For real. Like, and gosh, some people just it comes so natural to them. Just to be honest, like my second wife, she was honest to a fault. Like,
To a fault. Right.
yeah, and
Just brutal. Right.
to her, it just seems so simple. Like, just be honest. Um, and but from I guess my life and my life experiences, it just didn't ever seem like it was the right, like, because it seemed like every time I was honest, bad shit would happen.
Bad things would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we um we have the same agreement in our relationship. We just went through I'm actually going to be you guys will hear it next week on the podcast next Friday. I'm going to do a solo show on how I have my family rate me on what we call in the community now the five dials. and 5 dials meaning like just a measurement of just overall life in general. So like, like our businesses, our fitness, finances, and one of them is family, right? So we take our guys through 10 questions where your family rates you 1 through 5. Like you never do these things, or you always do these things, or sometimes, or that kind of thing. So it's like a scale 1 through 5. And I sat down with my family and I had them rate me on some of these things. And some of them, I'm not going to spoil it for next Friday, but some of them came with some very honest, like what you're just talking about, feedback. But I think there's a beauty in honesty when it comes to, and not necessarily the fear of it. And I'll explain. So like, for instance, one of the things that came back was, are you patient, calm under duress? That was one of the things my family had to rate me on. And you can probably imagine my home. It's 4 crazy high energy boys.
Mm-hmm.
Our house is very loud. There's a lot of things going on. There's always friends over. There's always something happening, right? And there's even just to get dinner on the table, it's like there's a lot of moving parts sometimes. And there are times, just depending on my day, the environment, or whatever else, I'm a little bit more less patient than normal. And so I knew that one was going to come back, but I had to face that fire, sit in the fire of my family. They're like, yeah, you're okay with that sometimes. And then sometimes you're not. I'm like, okay, explain. And part of the explanation that came back was it's like, it all depends on the day. They're like, you don't do anything like you yell at people or you call people names. You're not mean. But what you are is cold, distant, and quiet. And I'm like, really? Like, so tell me. And they're like, we just know by a look on your face not to mess with you. And I was like, what does that feel like? And they're like, it feels terrible because we're kind of like, don't say anything wrong to dad,
Yeah.
And I'm like, God bless. I was like, you guys feel that way? Or it's like walking on eggshells. And they're like, sometimes. Yeah, just, and they're like, you don't even mean to do it, but they'll be like, hey, can we help you? And you'll be like, no, I'm fine. And they're like, okay, dude. And those kind of like, I'm like, wow, that impacts you just that much. And they're like, yeah. They're like, you think you're being sly about it, that you think, you're not, impacting us, but you are. And I'm like, but with that honesty, right? Because you kind of remove like your feelings with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, holy crap, like this is great information. Like I don't want to go another day, another week, another month with them feeling like that. So if I'm at least aware of it through that honesty lens, well, I can now do something about it, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you can interpret honesty as like an opportunity, it's tremendous what it can do.
Oh, absolutely. And I was, and I as I'm listening to that, I I want to say like if you're a guy that's listening to this and you have the mindset that like that's your problem, not mine, it's time to reevaluate yourself and spend some time in introspection to be like, okay, I'm negatively impacting the people around me and my family. Like, be able to listen to that and be like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. And what am I going to do with that information? It's like, it's one thing. And here's the interesting thing too. I mean, you know, honesty can also be, an interpretation, right? And it's also
Yeah,
an opportunity of like, well, hey, if you don't align with it or don't agree with it, maybe this is a great opportunity to not necessarily get on the defense with it, but to have a fruitful conversation with appreciation and curiosity of like, let's dissect this a little bit. Cause I don't want you feeling that way, but also I want you to understand maybe some things that I'm going through or a lens that I'm viewing things through to where you can use it then as an opportunity for a conversation, right? Versus like a fight, right? Or we get butthurt from our feelings.
yeah.
But as we wrap up here, what I want to do is I just want to give you an opportunity here to, share anything that is on your mind or heart as it relates to any guy that might be going through any type of current adversity or who has gone through trauma in some way, shape, or form and is just trying to navigate like, man, what do I do here? What is the right next thing? What would you share with those guys?
Let's take that first step. Um, whatever that may be, if you want to get into running, and you just constantly feel like you don't have the time or energy or whatever, just put on your shoes. Put on your shoes and go outside. Um, and we talk about that in my call group often, is just put on your shoes. Uh, if you're trying to tackle something, no matter what it is, whether it's your honesty levels or how you treat people, it's just having that. All right, I'm gonna buy the book on Amazon and I'm gonna put it on my nightstand. Um, if you're trying to be healthier, just go to the gym. Don't even have a plan. Just go.
Just go in there.
Yeah. So, and I actually talked to the group before I joined this call because I have to be honest, and I'm down in a valley right now. As we record this, um, I tried doing 75 hard in the springtime, leading 49 other guys from the alliance, and I failed on day 48 because I had 400 milliliters of water left over. Um, and then from that point, from that point to now, I'm up like 17, 18 pounds since, that ended. And I was telling the guys that I'm getting back into my healthy habits. And my plan was I just started working out. I had no plan. I had no plan of what that was going to be, but I'm just going to the gym. And then I'll tackle my nutrition, and then I'll tackle what I'm actually doing in the gym. And so I've been doing that for about 2 weeks now, where I just I just put on my running shoes and I just go outside. Or like this morning, I meditated for the first time in, I don't know, probably like 2 months, um, because I just sat down on my pillow and I just did it. And so I think that's, to put all that into one thing is just put on your running shoes and go.
Yeah, don't think about it. The world, the weather doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to, and all the stars don't have to align. I think a lot of us wait for that like perfect moment that just never quite arrives.
Yep.
We have to create that perfect moment. And even if you don't feel like, like I love the analogy of the gym. There are times where I don't feel like going to the gym, and like there's like I'll even say it out loud to one of my boys, who's with me, and I do this on purpose because I also want them to know, like, I there are times I don't feel like doing what it is that I'm doing, right? But I also want to teach them a way to overcome it. There are times where we'll drive to the gym and I'll be in the parking lot and I'll look at my son who's working out with me. I'm like, I got to be honest, man, there's not one part of me that wants to walk in there and work out today. I was like, and I'm struggling to see the benefits right now. I was like, but I'm going to use my 10-minute rule. And then they know about the 10-minute rule. And the 10-minute rule is this: I'm going to go in there for 10 minutes. If I'm not feeling it after 10 minutes, I'll leave. I've gone to the gym for 30 years probably at this point. And the times where I've actually have walked out after 10 minutes, I think have been like 3 times.
Yeah.
It's very rare. And that's probably 100 times saying that rule out loud, at least. It's always like 5 minutes after you're into it, you're like, okay, I'm good now. But yeah, sometimes it's just not overthinking it, not overcomplicating it. It doesn't have to be this big event. Just walk in. Even if there's not one part of you that feels like doing it, just do it anyway. Even if it's the crappiest workout, run, meditation session, doesn't matter. You did it, right? David Goggins calls that, a rep, right? He calls that, he's like, the reason I still get up every single morning and run is because it's just the simple fact is I'm not going to break a promise to myself, even if it's the shittiest run.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I love this, man. Thank you so much for coming on today and just sharing your experience, just sharing your life. There's a lot of guys out there who are trying to navigate through hardship and through trauma and just, what the right next thing is. So thanks for sharing your wisdom with us, man.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. The alliance is has been great for building those connections with men that are just trying to figure it out too. We're just trying to figure it out. Like one of my Most unlikely friends have is come from the alliance, because we're both divorced dads just trying to be better. But we don't see eye to eye spiritually, politically, or in terms of like life, like how government should be run and all that. But we're just two dads just trying to do that, and it's one of the beautiful things about this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's always going to be our segmented groups when it comes to politics, religion, stances on worldviews, finances, all these things that don't align us. But the common ground is we're all dads, we're all men, and we do have a compass that we're trying to follow, through our heart, and especially when it comes to our kids and how we operate. So, brother, thank you for coming on. And I just want to give another shout out to this is how you change the game, right?
Yep.
This is how we change the game. So thanks for coming on, brother.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, Larry.
You bet.